Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It's brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment. It's never ordinary at Bet365. Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast is here. 5 days in on the Eagles, of course, training camp. Off today. No practice today for the Birds. They'll be back on the field tomorrow, getting ready for the Cincinnati Bengals. And we'll take a look at some of the storylines that are emerging from the first 5 days in practice with Geoff Mosher right now from the Inside the Birds podcast, who joins us here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. Geoff Mosher, welcome back, man. What's going on?
What's up, Mike? How you doing today?
Always good, bud. It's always good to catch up with you. And we've got a bunch of stuff happening here at Eagles practice throughout the first 5 days. So let's get some recaps and thoughts from you on some of the guys and some of the storylines emerging. Everybody keeps talking about Moro Ojomo. Is it fair or unfair to bring him up and think that the Eagles will not maybe miss a beat without Milton Williams in there?
No, it's fair to talk about him and the fact that he's being asked as the first guy up to replace what Milton Williams brought. Vic Fangio has said, and this is the difference between this year and last year. Last year, when Milton Williams came off the field, it was let's go to Moro Ojomo in the four-man rush and even in the five-man front. But there was really, if one of those two got hurt, there wouldn't have been a whole lot more. You know, Gabe Hall wasn't ready, Byron Young wasn't ready. This year with Ty Robinson in the mix, I should say that Thomas Booker did play a smattering of snaps last year. But this year, you've got Booker back, Ty Robinson, the draft pick, and then you have a year of Gabe Hall and a year of Byron Young with the team. So they're a little deeper there. And plus, you add in the fact that they are giving Jordan Davis some looks in a four-man rush here in camp next to whoever, whether it's Jalen Carter or somebody else. So Moro Ojomo doesn't have to absorb all of those snaps, but, you know, obviously he wants to. He wants to be that starter, and he's ready for it. He's built a little differently than Milton Williams. Longer arms, more slender of a body, but he's got, you know, really good hand usage, good motor, good get-off, so good athleticism. And he'll be the first guy to get that opportunity.
I was going to say, how does Ojomo's game differ from Milton Williams? Milton Williams, a guy who was probably more known for his pass rush and skills. So how are they different? You know, if you're the Eagles, do you have to use Ojomo differently than you use Milton Williams?
Milton was a little bigger. Milton, if you remember, also played some defensive end at Louisiana. And he could line up at D end in a four-man front if need be. And he had great athleticism for that size. He was also a third-round pick because he tested through the roof athletically. Moro Ojomo was a seventh-round pick. He's a little smaller in size, longer arms, I believe. So if you were to stand them next to each other, you would see that they have different body types, and his strengths are a little bit different. He has really, like I said, good hands and nice feet. You know, he can keep churning. He's learned a lot in his 2 years. You can tell he's refined as a pass rusher. But that's how they differ. They're just built differently. And Moro is not as big of a guy as Milton Williams.
You know, we're looking at that spot, and I thought Vic Fangio, you know, who's the truth serum guy, right? He tells you the truth on everything. He did talk about Jordan Davis being 25 pounds, 26 pounds, I guess, lighter, and how that will change possibly for him. And I wonder from you, when you look at Jordan Davis losing 26 pounds, he's still 6'6". That's the problem with him in terms for me as a pass rusher. To be the low man, that's hard. But Vic Fangio said, like, I want to see that should help him be in better shape as the game goes on. It sounded like he thinks he should be better because he's smaller. But do you see him being a different type of player than the one we've seen the first 4 seasons?
Yeah, I mean, we're only a week in. The pads have only been on once. I have paid attention to him with his new physique. I will say I think there are times that he still plays high. So you heard Vic say that he's got to play like he's 6'3" or 6'4" and not 6'6". And that's, I think, easier said than done for a guy who's, you know, played high for a lot of his life because he is tall. And for most of his life, he did weigh a lot more. So it's hard to get low, especially when your legs are wearing down. So, the weight loss should help. It should allow him to do some pass rushing that maybe weren't as easy when he was bigger, but it is not the be-all to end-all. And it takes more than just weight loss to really develop the technique and the fundamentals that you need to be a good pass rusher from the inside.
Geoff, obviously, when we look at the linebacker spot, let's take a look at that. Everybody's, excited about Campbell. For you, is it a Zach Bond, Jahad Campbell? Is that the configuration of linebacker that we will see the most this season?
It's going to be tough, Mike, because the temptation is to say yes because Campbell's a first-round pick. And
right.
When you watch him out there, you can see why. I mean, he's a great athlete, makes plays happen, fairly instinctive. But when you watch Jeremiah Trotter Jr., Mike, you can see that for what he lacks in the athleticism of the other two, when I say two, I mean not only Jihad Campbell, but Smile Mondon's a really good athlete too. Jeremiah Trotter lacks the athleticism, but he makes up for it with just knowing how to play the position, knowing where to be. And you can make a lot of really good plays when you just know the position really well. And I think TJ Edwards was a really good example of that, where he may not have been the greatest athlete, but he made so many important plays for the team because he knew where to be, he knew how to cover, he knew what landmarks he needed to get to clog a passing lane or how to get around an offensive lineman to get through the lane. Nakobe Dean's the same way. Nakobe Dean is not the biggest guy in the world. Good athlete, but not the biggest guy in the world. But he just last year learned how to play downhill the right way, how to cover the right way. So I can't dismiss Trotter Jr. being being able to either beat out Jahad Campbell, or maybe it's a thing where one guy's playing on first and second down, the other guy's playing in the nickel. I don't know, but I will say I think the temptation is to go say, hey, Campbell's on the field way earlier and he's making all this progress. That's great, but Trotter's going to make it tough.
On the latest episode of Inside the Birds, you guys can check that out on all podcasting platforms. The latest intel on these camp competitions. I guess one of the bigger unknowns, see where you guys handicap this right now, and which way do you see it going off the first week? Adoree Jackson, Kaylee Ringo, and do you throw Mac McWilliams in there at all?
It was interesting because, Adoree Jackson got like 3 or 4 days in a row of taking the first team reps, and you were starting to wonder if this was like last year where Isaiah Rodgers clearly pulled away from Ringo after about a week of competition and then started to take the reins there. But then Vic Fangio said something interesting about how the first few days of camp, Adoree Jackson, he said it's almost like he wasn't there because nobody was throwing the ball. He said you can still make good plays even when the ball doesn't come your way, but you're obviously trying to be evaluated when the ball does come your way. So I do wonder if part of seeing Adoree Jackson run with the first team for 3 or 4 days in a row was because Vic wanted to just see how he held up to it. And then, he didn't have as good of a day when the pads came out, got called for a penalty. We have a lot longer to go. I imagine Ringo will start to get some first team reps again as this becomes a competition. But Vic certainly likes what he's seen from Mac McWilliams. If I were to guess educatedly here, I would say what he's looking for with Mac McWilliams is to see if he could really be a good slot corner so that they can play Cooper DeJean at either safety or outside corner if they wanted to in certain formations. But we'll see as camp goes on. Certainly Mac McWilliams has caught Vic Fangio's eye.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And the follow-up, and you brought it up, I wanted to follow up with is are they intrigued to see Cooper DeJean play outside corner? Is that something that you think is plausible?
Plausible. I mean, right now it looks more like they're intrigued to see what he can do as a safety in base. So in the OTAs, we saw him playing outside corner. I imagine we'll see him doing that again in practice and the preseason games. I think they're just, what I know is that they've got a lot of optionality and they're looking to see where the best combinations are. And part of that means giving young players a chance to prove themselves among also giving proven players a chance to prove themselves at other positions.
All right, so young players trying to prove it, 2 young players at safety. Where are we in your mind at the safety position?
Well, hopefully for Andrew Makuba, he gets back from this injury that he had. Was it an injury? Yeah, he ran into, I think, was it him that ran into Gray and they both got hurt, I think, like that.
Yeah, so Danny Gray got himself released.
Yeah, that's too bad for Danny Gray, man. He can't stay healthy. But, I think Makuba's got to be able to get on the field. Sidney Brown's now taking a lot of reps. Tristan McCollum's getting some reps in there, too. I mean, it truly is a may the best man win type of competition, although Makuba is going to be the leader in the clubhouse by being a second-round pick. But if this is a situation like Tyler Steen last year, where Makuba is going to be out for 2 or 3 weeks, it's going to be harder for him to bridge that gap. Cooper DeJean was able to do it because there was nobody else that could play the nickel as well as he did when he got back. With Makuba, there are guys who can play safety here, including Cooper DeJean, right?
Yeah.
So he needs to get on the field and show it.
I know, and by the way, that safety spot will probably, one of the things I wanted to ask you about today, we were talking about this morning, which is generally the last during the Sirianni era, the Eagles starters have not appeared in games. On the defensive side of the ball, is that going to have to change this year? Are they going to have to play in these games?
Well, I mean, I think guys who might be starters in the week one, but have not won it yet, sure, will probably have to play. Adoree Jackson's probably going to have to play. Keila Ringo is going to probably have to play. Makuba is probably going to have to play. Sidney Brown is going to have to play. Trotter Jr., I imagine, will probably play. So, yeah, I do think on defense. Now, Ojomo, probably not, right?
What about Campbell? I mean, he's a first-round pick. Do they want to see him? Normally, I don't remember Quinyon Mitchell playing. Did he play in a preseason game last year?
That's a great question. I don't remember. I have to go back and look. I think he did. I think he did play in the preseason last year. Yeah, some of these guys will have to get out there and get that experience.
On the other side, we'll flip over to offense. Same thing. Do you see Tyler Steen having to play preseason games to win that job, or is that job over?
Yeah, I don't think if they're not going to play the first team line, I don't think that they're going to play Tyler Steen.
Right. So he doesn't. He doesn't have to win the job by performing in a game. In other words.
Right. I mean, he's performed in games. They've evaluated in games and just waiting for him to see as a starter here in camp, are they seeing progress, which Jeff Stoutland said, I believe yesterday, that he is. And you got to remember, they have a ton of guys that they've got to evaluate here between Miles Hinton and Drew Kendall and Darian Kennard and Matt Pryor and, the list goes on, Kenyon Green, that they're going to have plenty of snaps that they need to get. They need to get evaluation from those guys.
Well, it's funny you bring this up because this is another thing that we were discussing this morning, which was these guys that got drafted last year, Keegan, and there was another guy that got drafted on the offensive line. That's going to be a lot of competition in these preseason games.
Yeah, I lost you there a little bit. The guy they drafted last year, along with Keegan, was Dylan McMahon, but then they wound up losing him to the Rams. And yes, they've got to. Not only do they need to play guys right, Mike, but they got to play them sort of in different spots and see. They need to find a backup center. This Brett Toth thing has got to stop. He can't snap the ball in shotgun. It's been like that for 3 years. No knock against the guy. I mean, honestly, he's been in camp. I mean, he's competing year in, year out, and good for him. But he's just not a center. So you've got to find whether Keegan can be that guy, whether it's Kendall, whether they need to go and find one on the open, the scrap heap free agent market. And then they got to figure out, important roles for those rookies I mentioned and the Kennards of the world and their swing tackle. Is that Pryor, or is Pryor just going to be a right guard, right tackle? Who would be the backup left tackle? All of that.
Well, we might have talked about this a little bit, but if the center got hurt and Landon Dickerson moved over last year, they put Steen at left guard. Obviously, they can't do that this year. Matt Pryor would probably be that guy. But correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff.
I think Keegan would actually be that guy because Pryor, I don't believe they view as a left guard. Well, I mean, I could be wrong. I know he played left tackle 1 year for the Bears, but he's mostly been a right side guy. But go ahead.
Okay, so correct me if I'm wrong here. Last season, it was Steen that was the starting right guard. Becton got a shot because Steen got hurt and then never gave the spot up.
Right.
So that situation wouldn't have materialized had possibly Steen not got hurt. We might not have seen Becton win that job.
It's possible. I mean, it's also possible that 2 weeks into camp, they would have said, I want to see a little more or we've seen before where guys get promoted, especially after that first preseason game, they have a day off, and then the next day is a day that's sort of known for when you start to see some movement up and down. Is PG laughing at me? What's going on? I see him pointing at me and laughing.
Oh, no, I was Mike Gill showed me a tweet.
Oh, okay. It looks like you're just pointing at me.
Full disclosure, it's about John Kruk being annoyed at the Phillies' rain delay, which is true.
What a shock. Krucker's annoyed by something.
Yes.
But, yeah, you'll see movement a lot after that first preseason game, Mike, when guys start to go up and down and the coaches have a full game to evaluate. So possibly that could have happened last year. But you're right that the ankle injury paved the way for Mekhi Becton to kind of Wally Pip Tyler Steen in that moment.
Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast, which you can get on all podcasting platforms here on the Football at 4 Wednesday edition here. Last look on the offensive side of the ball. Yesterday, Adam was on. He talked about A.J. Dillon and Will Shipley behind Saquon Barkley. Do you think the running backs behind Barkley have a bigger role this year?
I think I think the Eagles want them to, yes. But that will be dependent on how effective they are in their roles. It would be great for A.J. Dillon to make this team, and he's not going to be the Kenny Gainwell because he doesn't catch the ball the same way, and he's not the same kind of running back. But, if the Eagles are up 24-14 in the fourth quarter with 7.5 to go, you would love to be able to give the ball to A.J. Dillon as a bulldozer and close out the game and give Saquon a little bit of a rest. And at the same time, if you want to be in your 2-minute drill and your 4-minute drill, and you've just, already given 15 touches to Saquon in the first half, you'd like to get Shipley involved there, catch the ball a little bit more, throw some screens. You're trying to open up your playbook. Shipley's the type of guy that can help you do that.
I will go out on a limb and say this. I was very, very disappointed the way they used Rashad Penny a couple of years ago. I will go out on a limb and say that A.J. Dillon will have a bigger role. I was way off on Penny. Now, we don't know if I was off. They never gave him a shot, but I guess they're saying I was off by not giving him the shot. But yeah. I think Dillon will have a bigger role than Rashad Penny did, who I was very excited when they got Penny. I said, oh, man, this guy's been a beast. They never gave him the ball ever, and I think Dillon will have a bigger role there. So we'll watch that all materialize and unfold. It all starts on Thursday night next week. You can listen to the Eagles and the Bengals right here on 97.3 ESPN and Football at 4 each and every day. I know Frank wants to ask you a Phillies question.
Hey, Jeff, your boy Ramon Laureano, is this the year the Phillies finally get him?
No, I wish. I love Ramon Laureano. He's not the player that he used to be when he was with, Oakland? What he was?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I tell you, I did, staying with Oakland, my dream scenario was that the A's would trade both Rooker and Miller to the Phillies. And I would honestly give up any prospect package, even Andrew Painter, to get those two. But I don't know that's going to happen.
Well, there's a late report here that the Phillies are calling the A's back to see if Miller could be had. I don't know that Rooker, I don't think they want to move Rooker, but possibly Miller. Who knows, man?
Pretty gutsy of them to pitch Painter today, by the way, and play Crawford.
Well, I would think that
stole a base.
That is a pretty good indication that Painter is not getting traded.
That was, I thought that as well. I mean, weirdly, Griffin Jacks pitched for the Twins today, so it's kind of weird the messages teams are sending. They're taking some risks here, but yeah, I thought Painter starting today, especially with him coming back from the surgery, meant that he is very, very, very unlikely to get traded.
Yeah, I would agree with that. By the way,
which also then makes me think the Phillies are very, very, very unlikely to really land a home run kind of player in this trade deadline.
The Mets have acquired right-handed pitcher Tyler Rogers from the Giants. His brother Taylor Rogers was traded earlier this week. So the Mets have now added another bullpen arm in addition to Gregory Soto.
Yeah, listen, give me Duran. I'll be pretty happy with that from the Twins.
For Painter?
I think that. No.
Well, that's what they want.
Well, of course they want that.
By the way, a lot of posturing, I think, going on because Ken Rosenthal, the same report that connects the Phillies to Miller, he also says the Dodgers are not in on a big high-end reliever like Duran. So we'll see. I think teams are playing the media against.
Stay tuned, right?
Stay tuned. Does that happen? I've never been involved with that before.
No, seriously though, has that have you ever been in that situation where people feed you stuff to try to get it out there that has no bearing?
Yes, and I generally was pretty good at it because I have a pretty good BS meter. I did one time very early in my career not report something, but insinuate something that in my mind didn't make sense and I shouldn't have. And, I realized.
So
that
they'll
was
call,
probably-
hey, Jeff, we are making calls to try to get said wide receiver in hopes that you put that out there with no intention of getting said wide receiver so that other teams around the league are like, oh, the Eagles are interested in a wide receiver.
It's usually the other way around. I try to talk to the other teams, not the team that I cover, to see who's calling them. Also knowing that there's a BS meter involved with them too. So it works both ways. But
Gotcha.
Usually the team that you cover is really not trying to advertise to the local guys who they're going after. But you can get good info from other teams who hear about, like, if a team is going to make a trade, but not with your team, but that they're exploring the market. That team is pretty good at knowing who's asking for what. I've gotten a lot of factually accurate information from teams that were sort of only involved because they knew the landscape.
Well, there you go. A little insight on a trade deadline situation from Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast and PhillyVoice.com as he joined us here on the Sports Bash for today's Football at 4. Thanks, Jeff.
You got it, guys.